Well, welcome back, team, to the Built Different podcast. We're in scenic, I was thinking of my word this morning, scenic Salt Lake City. Actually, a little bit outside of Salt Lake City, down at the Layton office with Mr. Austin and Mr. John. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This is exciting. I've been to Salt Lake a couple times, but every time I come back, I feel like I'm like going into a postcard, like just tucked in the mountain range here, and it's like, oh, these are what everyone takes pictures of. And you just walk back into it.
It's beautiful, especially this time of year.
I mean, we were looking outside at some of these trees, and it's like, wow, this is nice. Scenic Salt Lake City. Any other ways to describe it here?
I'm numb to it. Born and raised,
I
so I
Don't say that.
I don't even notice the mountains anymore.
This is one of the few places that rivals South Lake Tahoe, where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Come here, it feels like I'm kind of back home.
Yeah.
And the postcards in Dallas have no showing of anything scenic.
This is actually the first time that Grant has seen a mountain in his life.
Maybe Longhorns, maybe some.
I thought Jerry World. That's like your closest thing to a
Yeah,
mountain.
but that's man-made. I mean,
true.
these are. I mean, you look around and I think the trees I'm looking out here and the mountains. Anyway, guys, let's
So you guys don't have trees either.
To give someone a visual, if you look through these windows down here at the end, you can actually see Snowbird Resort, the very, very top gondolas, where we built some restaurants and stuff. But it's really cool. Really cool.
Unreal. Anyway, Salt Lake City. If you haven't been, come and visit. Maybe this is a paid ad for Salt Lake City. Flying to their airport. I love that. Well, guys, thank you guys for joining with us. We are out here. Got a little tour of the office this morning. I appreciate that. And two, just getting to connect with you guys. But I have learned to get out of the way for intros and the best elevator pitches of what you guys do here, and then we'll get into some conversations. But John, I'll kick it over to you to start us off, and we'll dive in.
Yeah. So Jon Ferguson, Vice President of VDC for Layton Construction. I've been here about a month shy of 12 years. One of the original 4 of the VDC group here in the company. So for better, for worse, I've been here the whole ride. So loving it.
Originally from Salt Lake, right?
Yeah, born just north of Salt Lake.
That's why you're numb to it.
Yeah, numb to it. born in the mountains, stay in the mountains.
Born in the mountains, stay in the mountains. Love that. And your whole career has been here with Layton?
I had a little bit before. Worked for a small architectural rendering visualization studio for about almost 7 years. That's where I kind of learned and just on the job training, learned drafting, CAD. Kind of found the passion for the architectural side. Then some interesting roundabout ways made my way to construction. Never thought I would, and landed here and never looked back.
How many times did we hear that?
I was just going to say, this is another intro where the beginning of the career was in architecture, and we figured out, hey, go to the construction side, go to the builder side.
If we have any architects listening.
Yeah, sorry.
That's awesome. Mr. Austin.
Yeah, well, I didn't come from the architecture side, so I guess my story's a little different. But I interned here at Layton as in marketing. Actually, my degree was in business and marketing, and when I came over here, it was proposal development, which wasn't quite marketing. So I wasn't really into it. It wasn't like a passion I had, and I think at the time, John was looking for some help flying a drone, and so that's kind of how my career started here. I mean, before that, I graduated from the Weber State University, and so really I didn't have like a career before that. I was just working odd-end jobs and stuff. So this has really been where I've been the last 9 years. So
you guys have been together the whole ride, right? I mean, ride or die brothers here?
That's right. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Shake and bake at Salt Lake. Here we go.
Before we ever do anything, it's like, all right, shake and bake.
Yeah. Get it.
That's awesome. Well, it's clear we can tell y'all's vibe here is pretty awesome. Your office is pretty awesome. And the people here, honestly, it's been fun. We did an episode with your guys out in Nashville, which was super fun. Man, that was an awesome job just to get to meet more of your team, what the work you guys are doing out there. I mean, so a little lay of the land for Layton. Obviously, Salt Lake is home for you guys here. What are some of the other offices and other kind of places that you guys call home and build?
Yeah. We have 13 offices, I think. Everywhere from California across to Nashville, where you went. We have locations in Florida. We're now making a a footprint in Texas a lot. That's a big push for us. Hawaii, we have 2 offices there, which is
Trying
really
to get
cool.
out there. We haven't recorded one of these yet out there.
Yeah, we had a big drone reality capture project there that just wrapped up. Waikai. We about 4 years ago, we merged. We're acquired by Structure Tone Building Group, STO Building Group, and so it's actually been awesome. Just really broadened our footprint. We're now part of 13 companies. They have a really big presence kind of in the interior world on the East Coast. And so partnering that with kind of the national reach of the ground up, and we also have a really strong interiors group. Just partnering that up together with STO made really good sense. So it's been a wild ride, but I think it's been really, really good for everybody.
And that acquisition happened how long ago? Or when did you guys merge?
I think 2020
2020
was officially started.
Yeah, 2020, 2021.
It's almost 2/3 of the way through your guys' time here. You guys, double in size?
Yeah, so when I started, we were in our, I think, 15, 16. We were still pretty big. Layton was pretty big. Then just had a huge growth. Just went up the list, and then now with STO, I think we're the largest privately held general contractor in the U.S., which is awesome. Yeah, really good.
That is awesome. We're going to dive right into it, fellas. So season 4, all things that we've been talking about is field stuff. Adam needs a button here for his little saying of feed the field. Feed the field. I was thinking maybe you get a t-shirt. Maybe we get some t-shirts made.
Yeah, there needs to be some new swag for season 4. Feed the field for sure.
Feed the field. Kind of sounds like a football chant, I don't know. But anyway,
Cool logo.
I like it.
I'm curious to know.
It'd be great if we were running a fertilizer company.
Feed the field. This is not an ag podcast, but we could get that way if we really wanted to. But what I'm really curious to know from you guys is just your backgrounds with interacting with folks in the field environment. Think superintendents, think field engineers, think folks that are on the front lines that are building the projects that we maybe sit behind a computer and see any different perspective that we want. But what I'm curious to maybe kick off and start with is just your perception of technology. Well, your perception of field's perception of technology. Then a couple diving in here, but what do you think the field's perception of technology is today, and how is that something that you guys see come across your team and the things that you guys implement and use? And just curious of maybe your thoughts on that, John, first.
Yeah, I think their perception today is very different than maybe 2-3 years ago. Just in my experience, technology was somewhat pushed on them, whether they wanted it or not. There was a lot of innovation and technology push from the office side, and they were somewhat telling the field people what to use, and this will make your job better, whether they thought it was or not. And I don't know if there was a lot of support or backing from the field to innovate and change, because it had been pretty much stagnant for a long, long time. A lot of the most seasoned superintendents, they'd been doing it a certain way before this real big technology push, and I don't think they wanted to see that change necessarily. Fast forward to today, I think it's totally changed. They're seeing the value. The cost of things is going down, so it's not so much an effect on their bottom line of their job, their individual project. They can see it as a help. And a lot of what I've had to do, and a lot of the people on our VDC team, is wading through the technology that's going to actually have a positive input and getting that to the field. And so now we're having more, and Austin can speak a lot to this, is it's more of a request from the field to implement technology instead of a, hey, you're going to use this whether you want to or not.
It's interesting you said 2 to 3 years, because I'm always curious to hear different people's timeline of things. Mm-hmm. I want to get back to that a little bit, but what would you say? So just to summarize what you kind of said, hey, before it seems like it was being pushed. Now it's almost you're hearing and inquiring from things that folks are
They're pulling.
They're
Yep,
pulling.
they're
There we
pulling.
go. Feed the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree 100% with John. I think the biggest thing is when the field brings it to you, it's less selling you have to do to them. And so that's what's nice is because 2 or 3 years ago it was, hey, check out this. Hey, look how we can implement this. And the first question I'd get from a superintendent is, well, how much does that cost? How's this going to affect my schedule? When they come to us with the idea, it's so much more of a smooth transition to say, let us vet it for you, let us figure out how it works, and then we'll go to that. A good example is we have a superintendent who's now a construction manager came to me and said, we're looking at some underground utility stuff that we want to implement. Can you look into it for us? So we looked into it. It was something that was definitely viable to use, and though the project got put on hold, that started this snowball effect where he went to some other superintendents and said, hey, I found some piece of software, a piece of something to share, which has now kind of created this small pool of superintendents in this business unit who talk regularly about different pieces of technology. So it's organic growth is really what you want in that situation, because we as individuals who come from this space, it's easy for us to say, do this, do that, this is why it works, this is why it's great. But we live in this world. We breathe it. For them, they're living and breathing the application of driving a schedule and making sure those things work. And so you have to find the best way to insert that into their workflow without distracting what they're trying to do.
But I think, too, hearing both of your answers, I resonate with that in a lot of ways. But from my experience, too, tech, 10 years ago up until the last few years, it's because of that push. I think the key word in a lot of this is education, where from, I don't know, a long time ago, it was like VDC Innovation would buy a tool, vet it, in an executive way, and then push it to the jobs. And a lot of time the project team didn't even know it was there, right? They didn't know why it was there.
Yep.
And so there wasn't an effort in like training, understanding what the ROI should be, understanding how to implement it and get the most value out of it. And so I think that natural sort of return or the pull, right, is a lot of people are now educating themselves and saying, hey, that's an interesting application for this. Go vet it, and then let's see if it works.
Yeah. We're really lucky at Layton. The executive leadership, we're broken into different business units that specialize in different sectors of construction. And we have really forward-thinking executive leadership in those business units, where I think they've seen for the last 10 years that kind of push and, hey, our competitors are innovating, they're doing stuff, what can we do? So they've somewhat allowed us to innovate and to test and to try and to fail with different pieces of technology till we've whittled it down to.
Would you say they've encouraged that or just allowed it?
It depends, kind of a mixture of both, where I had to build the relationship where they trusted that it was going to have some sort of outcome, and not always every time it's been exactly how we wanted it to be. But that kind of mindset and that push from the top has let the superintendents, the construction managers, now they're seeing the push from above, and they're like, okay, well, I probably should dig in and start looking at like drone deploy. How can we apply it? They're looking for their own ways to use it, which is letting us kind of grow what we're able to provide to them.
I have a follow-up to one of Austin's points here about superintendents coming to you guys with suggestions or like, hey, what's this? Where are they typically seeing those things? Where are they getting those, ideas or that inspiration to come to you and say, hey, what's this?
Yeah. I think they come from the internet. They're searching things, looking up stuff. I think they go to trade shows and something sparks their interest. And, as a superintendent, I've never been one, but I've seen it all the time, and they're very busy, so they don't have time to sit down and go over something and look at something. So with this particular superintendent I'm talking about, he said, hey, can you look into this? Can you follow up with a call? Can you get a demo of it? Can we see what it looks like? And then can you basically write a report and send it my way and tell me what you think? And I think that goes to what John was saying. We've become a trusted source inside of Layton when it comes to these things. People rely on us to come to them and bring that feedback to them and say, here's what we found, here's how it's going to work, what do you think of this? And so, yeah.
What about the kind of internal recommendations? meaning like you told a story the other day about one job hearing about it, the next job kind of inquiring about it, the next job, now they're using it full blown. Like that obviously kind of crosses the loop from you of like, hey, they're hearing about it from other people, they're getting it vetted from other people. Like talk about the catching fire effect from job to job.
Sure.
Like
I think that's the most important part. I think that's how you organically truly grow something. You have to prove it on one project, and then so at Layton, I like to look at it like this. We have a few champions, we call them, of tech, basically. I know I can go to them and say, hey, let's try this. Let's look at doing this. Because if it's successful on their project, they're going to in turn start talking to other people about it. And so it really is a matter of vetting it and making sure it works here in the office or in a controlled environment, and then taking it to that field application and then showing them how it's going to work. And I always tell the field people, like, I'm not here on your project to add work or to add stress. I'm here to fit in to what you're trying to do. And if I can't get that part to fit in, then I'm really a distraction to what they're trying to get done.
No, go for it.
I didn't have one.
You didn't have one?
Yeah.
I got plenty. I've been known to steal the mic here, so that's why I always try to look at Adam and say, hey, you go next.
I'll jump in.
You got any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I think one of the major pushes and one of the benefits of having Austin as kind of a dedicated resource to reality capture is, I think when I say 3 years, is that was a big shift for us. It went from housed within just VDC in kind of a part-time application, and when the field can't reliably have a dedicated support person, maybe they get a response of, hey, I'm busy with a proposal, or I'm busy with this XYZ doing other things. It becomes kind of an afterthought. And so shifting to, hey, he's dedicated, he's always there, willing to help support, it really has helped the field like latch on, because it's important.
You kind of thank you for going back to this question, because that's what I was actually kind of interested to know. 2 to 3 years. I mean, the world kind of changed 2 or 3 years ago. Reality capture kind of changed 2 or 3 years ago from being oh, that was nice to have, to like, oh, hey, I can't go onto my job and I can't bring other people onto my job. Maybe I should use kind of this tool. But
Yeah.
Would you say that's when things kind of shifted a little bit of that push versus pull?
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of that, but I guess, yeah, it's right in line with it, where technology, I mean, the simplest way is, before we didn't even trust Teams for like a meeting.
Microsoft Teams, you're saying?
Yeah, Microsoft Teams. When we were doing a project, everybody was in person, and it had to be in person, and it was around a table. And construction is known to, if you're not at your desk, it's like, where are you?
It was a very weird feeling at that.
Yeah, you're not
beginning
productive.
of COVID. I was a project engineer on that job, and all the project engineers got sent home. Superintendent stayed on the job, and there was this very interesting dynamic for this next few weeks of like, superintendents walk around like, well, where are the engineers?
Yeah,
who's going to answer all my questions?
Yep. Yeah, so I think that strong push and buy-in of, we can use Teams and still be very productive, and sometimes even more productive. I mean, I'm working with people across the entire country, every time zone, every single day. It wasn't as big of a shift for me, but for a project manager or a superintendent to trust, hey, I'm going to log into Drone Deploy, I'm going to see the production that happened that day, look at the progress. They trust that technology more because they had to.
Yeah, I want to go back to a thought you had of the dedicated resource. I think that's an interesting point too, where I think a lot of our listeners either are in positions from you guys, either a tech or VDC background, and have a hard time having maybe a leadership. So last season 3, we kind of met with the leadership teams of saying, hey, like how does this go from like a hobby to like a core part of your business to like, hey, this is thriving. And it's interesting to hear you talk about having a dedicated resource, because I think that's often neglected, of someone that field team can go to and trust. Mm-hmm. And you said it so well. It's like, oh, I'm in a proposal, can't help. Hey, I'm like busy with this other thing, can't help. And like, you don't get those opportunities often to answer those phone calls. And the times I've been with you, you've got a lot of phone calls, which is great. It's good. I mean, it's interesting to hear that, but like, talk a little bit about how, like, did that just happen naturally where you're like, hey, I need a dedicated person to answer some of these questions? Or was it just purely out of like, hey, I'm getting too many things thrown my way. Like, who's gonna help these folks? And if no one, they're just not gonna get answers.
Yeah. I mean, our drone program, I say drone because it started as a drone program, and then it is now full-blown reality capture group, like a full group within our company. Really, it fostered from the pursuit. It wasn't really field application at all. It was, we're going to, the very first job we ever flew a drone, this morning I was trying to think of the year it was. The Phantom, it was a Phantom 1, brand new. No one had ever used it. No legs, no like moving parts. Every time you'd land it, it'd fall on the ground, your blades would break. I mean, it was so, looking back, it's really bad. We didn't have drone deploy, and we needed to fly a site that we couldn't get Google Earth, we couldn't get any resources, and that was kind of what spurred it. We used it for pursuit, and then it grew to people in that pursuit then were assigned to a hospital project in Farmington, Utah, just north of Salt Lake, and they wanted to see progress of it being built. And that was the very first field application. And so it was like, well, we need to purchase a drone to do this. And I was here local as a local resource, but that was like number 20 of the items I needed to do that day. And that's when I started going to marketing and saying, hey, do you have anybody? Because I was kind of a team of one. I didn't have the resources to get like an intern. I didn't have the resources to hire somebody. It was, who do we have existing that could do this, that we trust? And
Austin has entered the chat.
Austin entered the chat.
I was just going to say, there's Austin.
And so he was here local, and it really started on that project where it was every single week the superintendent was on us, hey, I want to see these updates. And again, pushing from the field, they were telling us, our ownership really likes seeing these. And so that started our looking into like, how do we do this more automated? Well, drone deploy kind of came into the discussion. How long ago?
That was like 2015, 2016.
2015, 2016.
Not to date ourselves here, but
yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to get on a tangent, but remember we went to drone deploy days, and Grant spoke at it when he was with his former company. And
we don't talk about that.
Well, I say that. I only say that because I think it was you and Hunter that kind of sold it to us in a way that was organic and it wasn't the sales rep approach. And I think we at the time looked up to what you guys were doing and said, we got to be this and better, So, well, I guess we have you to thank for it. So thank you.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Scenic Salt Lake, talking about 10 years ago. But it's interesting to that point, though. I think what I heard you say was like, hey, the problem statement in the pursuit phase was we got to like show how this is actually going to get built and just visualize it different. The problem in the construction phase was how do we just like document and show the progress of how this is going, production tracking, all that stuff. Like, do you think the field thinks of technology in that same way of like starting with a problem statement first, or is it just so fast moving that it's like, hey, anything that can help keep me afloat? Like, because we talked about that in previous seasons of like how important it is to start with a problem statement if you actually want to sustain innovation in technology. But like, is that the same approach at a field level of like starting with a problem statement, or is it just like a, hey, throw me the life preserver, man, anything that can like help me solve this issue? And problem statement may be a little too official at a field level, but
I mean, I think 100%. We're fighting somewhat of the same battle of what we were doing with drones, where we were pitching and selling, like we felt like used car salesmen, like, hey, you guys, you put this in your budget, you need to fly drones, because we saw the vision, but the field didn't see that problem statement yet. And it kind of organically, like Austin said, it organically grew into, this is going to save us time, money, effort. We're getting better data. All this kind of trickled in. So now we're not selling drones, but now as we're getting into like AI, the progress tracking using this next phase of technology, we're somewhat at well, what's the problem statement? What are we trying to fix that's broken? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we're quite solving that problem yet. It's going to come and it'll be organic. But it's interesting how those phases come, because the field's not going to fully adopt it until they see, well, there really was a problem, and this is going to fix it directly.
The full reason why, what the value actually of doing it is.
The question I was going to ask you though is, do teams feel like they want to be featured?
Yeah, absolutely they do. I think anybody wants to be recognized for something they've done. I think that's an inherent trait as a human. I think we want to be praised or spotlighted for something we've done, and so that was the other caveat to that. It's like when I go to a project and say, hey, we want to highlight you, or social media wants to do a post, unless it's like under an NDA, nobody says no to them, and they love that opportunity to like showcase what they've done, because I think, and Adam might be able to speak a little bit to this, as a field person, I think you just get in the mode of like build, and maybe that recognition doesn't really come until like the end of the project.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is beautiful what you built. But throughout the duration of it, maybe that doesn't come quite as often as it should, or someone would like. And so I think at the end of the day, when it's like, hey, we're going to feature you, or hey, we're going to talk about your project, people will like gush over that stuff.
Because I'm trying to think of, like, Adam and I talk about this a lot. What is the menu of value adds that you provide the team? Now, that at a high level, that sounds really dumb. Hey, I'm here as a resource. I'm here as a touch base, all that kind of stuff. But like, I think you bring up another one of just like recognition. Like, how do like going through that list of like, hey, why, to the listeners that are listening in here, think through the value adds that you provide those field teams, because I think that often gets just brushed over. It's like, they're here to sell me a new car, the new shiny.
Well, I'll say it's unique in my perspective, because I'm not those people who fly the drones for me, or not for me, but for their project. Like, they don't report to me. Like, I can't tell them, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I just tell them to best utilize this tool, you need or should do ABC. And so it's interesting that, once you gain the respect of them, not that they report to me, but they'll listen to what I have to say, and then they'll implement that. And it's funny, or not funny, but more interesting to hear them come back and say, oh, my project team loved that suggestion. And it's rewarding to me, because they don't need to recognize me for it. I'm hoping that young project engineer is getting recognition for something he's doing on that project site. And I think that's the cool thing to see, is that grow like that.
I think it boils down to the teamwork, right? I mean, you may not be we've said dedicated a lot in this conversation, but like, you're not a dedicated project resource per se. You don't sit there full time, but you're still effectively part of that team. And so while that engineer or the superintendent, they have a million things to do, right? The to-do list is just ever growing. You also can jump in and like supplement, be like, hey, that thing you're doing, you could do it better doing this way, or here's a tool that will help you be more efficient in getting that to-do list done. And then to your point about highlighting a recognition from the field perspective, I always thought it was funny, like most field people are kind of allergic to the camera. Like, see the camera come out, see the office people with the cameras come out. I'm like, I'm gonna be out in the field. I'll be in the porta potty. I'll be doing something different.
But to that though.
But when we see the project highlighted, when it's like, my last job with Turner, it's won 1 million awards, got DBIA the year, project of the year. Like, every time I see a post about that project on LinkedIn, I'm like, and I feel good about that, because I poured, so many years and hours into that job. Like, that's what gets me going. I don't need to see my face on it necessarily.
Yeah, and I'll say to that, I hear that same thing from everybody, but it's amazing that once they get in front of that camera and they're talking about the project, you can instantly see the joy that they have from that, and you also see the confidence that comes from that as well. So I find it funny that superintendents or project managers, people will say, I don't want to be on the camera.
But then you get them there, though.
That's what I mean. They reluctantly get on, and all of a sudden it's like, man, that's some of our best sound bites.
It's mostly because the rest of us are going to make fun of them. That's pretty much why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, because you talk about internal growth as well. Like, it's hard for superintendents to go visit other jobs, right? Like, I've seen some of the most growth inside companies come from the social media page purely for their own company. Like, think about that. Like, their own company's social page has more value for their own company than it does anything else. Like, that seems a little backwards, but it
applies to me too.
Yeah, right.
I follow all of our social stuff because I love seeing the progress, and you might not have had any part or piece in, but especially if you did have just a tiny little part, you're like, oh man,
and
I helped do something on that.
And that's why I just think it's so fascinating how, call it, tech teams and marketing teams are still so distant from each other, because they're so complementary of each other. Like, marketing needs content, technology needs growth and, you know, adoption. Those needs are like complementary to themselves, but that doesn't always happen.
Well, and I'll say this, you know, John's done a great job of that. He's brought marketing kind of, I wouldn't say into our fold, but you regularly talk with marketing about different things. And while, yes, there's still sometimes a disconnect at times and stuff, but I think a lot of what John has done through his career here at Layton is, you know, not proposal development, but he's creating stuff for that proposal. And so he's always worked hand in hand with marketing. So at least from my perspective of that here, we've always had a great relationship and great working environment with our marketing team.
In the marketing phase too, when I was in VDC as well, like you oftentimes get those senior superintendents who will come in and be part of that presentation team, part of the pursuit team. That's also a spot where the technology team gets to flex some of those muscles on some of the more out there things. Like, you're trying to impress a client.
Yep.
You also have a superintendent sitting here looking at what's getting produced, and man, I've never seen that before. Like, I've heard that so many times in that pursuit phase where it's like, that thing's cool. How do I get that on the job? Are we really going to do that on this job, or is that just for the presentation?
Yeah. Yep.
I think the lesson learned for folks in your guys' positions, if you don't have a content calendar or a regular sync with your marketing team, like, you're missing out, right? I mean,
It's one of the hardest things for me is getting my teams and the people I work with to feed me the success stories. Happens all day, every day. They're big, they're small. People shy away from getting that shout out. It's a little bit like intimidating. But getting people to feed me, because we have a regular social media post, and just getting those stories is so hard. And marketing is trying to get it. They're trying to get it. But then I have to step in and be like, guys, please write just a paragraph saying this cool thing you just did, because you did something cool. We just need to hear about it. And so it's really difficult for people to look back and be like, yeah, I did do something cool, or I deserve recognition for that thing I just did.
I think that almost speaks a little bit to kind of the current state of technology and innovation, is that when we're out on the job site doing the job, and I use the photo, or I use the model, or I use whatever the tool is for its intended purpose, and it works, it's like a little blip on the radar. Like, it worked the way it should, right? We're not at a point where we're saying, hey man, tell me when the nail gun works properly.
Yep.
Because it just works every time, right? If you're not hearing all the success stories, at least from my opinion, it's because it worked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It wasn't. You're mostly just going to hear the times it didn't work.
That's true.
You know,
which is tough though. I mean, that
it is.
Obviously provides the dichotomy of tech is like, you want to keep growing and highlighting it, but yet when it's doing its job, it's silent. And yeah, that's tough.
It's kind of a good problem to have.
It is a good.
I'm with you.
It's like,
we struggle with it when we're trying to come up with ROI calculations for our software. It's like, tell us how great it was. Like, well, I didn't write down all the times I used it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a good
thing.
It worked. Yeah, it worked.
I think that ROI statement can be a double-edged sword at times.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
To its own conversation. I want to land the plane here, fellas, because I've been keeping you too long. But thanks for chatting with us. One, it's fun. I think what's really exciting about your guys' team is just how much you focus on the parts that are needed at the right time. I love it. I didn't know even your full, starting in there, you having a need, then that grow. It's just interesting of when timing and need really intersect themselves. Don't let that pass by. Don't overlook that. Take advantage of it. I mean, you probably would say the same on jobs too, when the timing and the need intersect themselves. go out and drive out there, get on the site, like write it down, take someone to lunch, hear like, and that's just what's really interesting, that I think those moments pass by and we kind of just like, you missed it, you know, and they'll come back, but don't miss out on those opportunities. That, at least that's what I'm hearing from you guys. It's like, hey,
Well, we're at a point where our clients are very, very knowledgeable as well. So not only do our field staff know what's out there, our clients know what's out there. So now in their prerequisites or in the qualifications to even build the job, they're outlining technology. And if you don't have your pulse on it and you're not implementing already, then you're going to have to scramble to check that box for your client, because there's been a big shift. Again, the last 3-5 years where it was kind of, we need BIM. And even before that, it was, you know, we were selling BIM as like this new thing. That's a thing of the past. BIM is not, you should be doing it or you're behind. Now it's a requirement in the RFP stage. It says, tell us about BIM and how you're using it. And now there's the second question that's coming out is, what's new and innovative? Tell us about the other technologies that you're using. And so you just have to be on top of it. You have to, it's here to stay. It's not new. And just, it's a constant battle to check that box.
yeah, it's crazy to think we'll be back in scenic Salt Lake in 2-3 more years and think like, what are the things that are now becoming standard that we, like 2 years, like you kind of said, it, reality capture is like, it's just kind of standard now for us. But now as you move into the next kind of segment, it's like, hey, does, you know, printing site layout, is that like, oh, I can't believe that wasn't a standard 2 years ago, or hey, I'm sure some augmented reality, so who knows?
The robots are coming.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about. But fellas, thank you guys. Any last thoughts, Austin, you want to share?
No, I'll just say, you know, I appreciate you guys coming out here and doing this. To me, technology's awesome. It's ever growing. I'll highlight one thing real quick, Doc, with the drone. I mean, we talked about this 4 or 5 years ago being something that we want to see. And I think 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been equipped to handle or take on a Doc drone. Fast forward to now, we have a project that wants it. We're ready to implement it. I think it's just, that's how it speaks to our organic growth over the years, that people now know, like, drones no longer are even questioned here at Layton. We're going to do it. So now that frees up the next step of, okay, well, now we have interior capture. Boom, that's slid in under the non-question. It just gives us more room to roam in the world of unexplored technology out there and how we can use it.
Yeah, and I think it puts the exciting part back to the field side, is like, you guys now become your standard menu of services, or standard menu of practice. These are just standards. Now you can start to branch out, and like, you think of some really creative restaurants out there, maybe diverging here, but it's like they got their core staples, and now they're really innovating in the new kind of things that could also feed into that kind of core menu of things. Anyway, I put my chef hat on. Fellas, thank y'all. Much appreciated. Appreciate you guys even working through some of the technical things. Doing these in person is so much more fun, but it comes with some challenges, and we're learning along the way. So,
Adapt and overcome.
Feed the field.
Feed the field.
I don't know
Feed
if I
the
can.
field with robots.
There's
We
not
can't
a tie
always.
to that one yet, but appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in with us, and we'll see you guys here on the next one. Make sure to subscribe to Built Different on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Let's build this community together.